Today, we're looking at a red ink by Sheaffer Red. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. If you don't know me, I'm an ink guy, and if you do know me, hi. If you like red ink and want to look at more of them, there's a link to a playlist down in the description. To try and standardize some of the writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia dot pad in the first part of the writing samples. This first paper is Clairfontaine's 90 GSM. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 4 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. No feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show the tiniest bit of color variation, although we're not really getting it, but the smear test says if you smeared while you were writing, you could recover it. To make sure there's a range of experience with this ink, the writing samples are always done with this Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, this Jinhao X450 with a medium, and this Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Hero 703 fine with a fine nib was inked up, used for a day, and then used to take the notes for this very video. Now, let's take a look at the second standard paper, 52 GSM, Tomoe River. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 8 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. But the smear test says you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and it's immediately put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And there is a very interesting line at the bottom that I cannot quite identify. It's not red, not black, but it's there. I can't quite identify that color. The rest of the red is really pushing its way up and gathering more at the top. Now the one on the right really shows that line a bit more, a bit there in place. But I still can't quite put my finger on what that color would be. Otherwise, this chromatography looks the same as the other one. I'm not expecting a ton of resistance here. The last standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 6 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we're not getting it. It's a good standard red. The smear, that's the word, smear, shows that you could probably recover this if you did smear while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing. Looking at the highlighter, there's a bit of blowout that's occurring in the capital H. I'm just very risk averse. I wouldn't use it for that reason. But otherwise, it is performing pretty well when you're highlighting it. What I actually like using it for in this effect the most is if you're drawing bloodshot eyes. I like to put the lines in with this and then use the yellow over top because the blowout really breaks up those lines in an interesting way. Anyway, water is reactivating and lifting it off of the paper, not entirely, but you're seeing it go away. That's only 30 seconds of that water dot being there. Pen flush doesn't do anything more than water does, which means you don't need it. Of course, it did only take water to get this out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution, as you would expect, is completely removing it. The next writing samples are done on paper that changes from video to video, and in this video, we're going to take a look at Word notebooks. We're just going to take a moment and circle some of these bleed spots that seem to occur somewhere in this region here. But for a pocket notebook, all of these little dots probably don't stop it from being effective to use the back of the page. It's really not that bad. Much more of it's coming through where the scrubby is, and unless you're coloring in your pocket notebook, it shouldn't be a problem. So this is not too bad, and the ghosting's not bad actually either. The 1.1 does feather, does spread, has no halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine does feather all over it. It's tiny though, and I think it's very usable. It has no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The medium has the same amount of feathering as the extra fine. It does spread just a little bit, not quite all the way up to broad. I wouldn't use it. It just, the combination of that little bit more spread and that little bit more feathering makes it just not look as good. But again, for pocket notebook, not doing too bad. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 1 second to dry. So this is really a good ink for this paper if this is what you wanted to be able to use. It's your pocket notebook. It's not where you're, solving million-dollar math equations. And yes, there are million-dollar math equations. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any, but the smear test says you could definitely recover your cure for cancer if you wrote it in your pocket notebook and accidentally smeared it afterwards. For the inks tested, there's an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Sheaffer Red has a viscosity of 1.19, which puts that really close to the water line, which is 1. Wow, this is wet. The next writing sample is done on a composition notebook like you would have used in science labs. The only real bleed spots that we're getting is here at the scrubby, and not such a big deal unless you're filling in big areas like that in your lab class. And there's no real ghosting. Pretty good. That's a medium with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Great performance. The extra fine, no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's about the same tone as the medium. 3 seconds to dry. This paper has really just impressed the crap out of me. The scrubby shows no color variation, and we didn't get it. In the smear test, you could recover this no problem if you smeared it. So, hey, good news. For the inks tested, there is an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Sheaffer Red has an average dry time of an amazing 8 seconds, which makes this a fast drying ink, faster than some fast dry inks. The last writing sample, a crowd favorite, 20-pound copy paper. Take a moment and circle the bleed spots that have occurred somewhere in this vicinity here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. But the good news is it's not touching the page underneath. Now, you couldn't use the back of the paper just because the bleed spots on both sides might make a bunch of your writing unuseful. The result of all of that bleed is a lot of ghosting, but it's not touching the next paper. So if for some reason you're making your own notebooks out of 20-pound copy paper, you could use Sheaffer Red ink safely, just not the back of the page. That medium has some spread, minor feathering. You got to look at the E and the A in Sheaffer, and you see the tiniest little bit of it, but it is not bad at all. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine spread to about a medium, or about a fine, not a medium. Same tone as the medium with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. That's right, there's no feathering. It did really well here, despite the fact of how deep it was getting in. 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation, and we didn't get any. The smear test says you could definitely recover it because you can't smear this. Instead of finding inks that look like Sheaffer Red, because just use the standard in the fountain pen community. I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice blue by Bookbingers. Blue Racer Snake. Because it sounds like it's an eraser snake. Kind of funny. So what do I think of Sheaffer Red? It is a standard red. Nothing really stand out, but it is the standard for a reason. Sometimes when things are that good, there's just no real reason to change. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I think a medium flow fine or extra fine is best for grading purposes because frequently when we print stuff, we print on both sides, so let's try and control some of that bleed as much as we can. I hope you got something out of this video, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we take a look at Mont Blanc's Ink of Love.